What's going on, my peeps? Kenny here again, and today I've got another Apex review for you guys. This is about the Bestech Eskra. That's right, folks. This is a knife manufactured by Bestech, designed by a Polish designer. There's his maker's mark by the name of Grzegorz Kombau is his nickname, Grabarski. I hope that I didn't butcher that name pronunciation, but he is a Polish designer, and I believe he works for Bestech, but I'm not sure about that. Don't take my word for it. In saying that, this is a knife designed by him and manufactured by Bestech with M390 steel, titanium anodized handle scales, titanium backspacer, pretty much what you would expect in a titanium folder coming out of China these days. And the price point, Bestech's, right in that price point where we would expect almost like and Artisan and these other manufacturers kind of coming up at this same level. We're at about $254 is the going price for these. And I think it's permitted by these these machined titanium scales and the M390 steel. I'll get more into that as I go into it. I've been eager to try some Bestech, or to get a Bestech in hand, because I've been seeing where they've been going these the last year or two with coming up in fit and finish and just their designs and everything, really starting to get up into that higher tier Chinese production knives. So I was really eager to try one. And I know they had a bit of a little conspiracy stuff going on with their heat treat. We had two knives that tested from LTK that were really low. He took it to Bestech. Bestech did what we would expect a manufacturer that has some type of standards, someone that has some standards. They went ahead and tested their knives. They found the same thing that we were finding, and they have been trying to get their heat treat back in line. And they've been doing a really good job. And even like you guys saw that video they just put out about them testing their new knife, one of the new ones that have been produced. And then also you probably saw the statement on Instagram where they're saying hey, we know that M390 can be taken to a higher level, and we are going to be doing that, because a lot of production companies just want to go, hey, this is what Bowler says to do. We all know that that's not it wasn't designed for cutlery, and we all know that M390, 20CV, and all these analog steels can go much higher, and actually should, to give us the performance that we're expecting. So in saying that, Bestech's been going above and beyond to try and get that done. So sorry about the lighting here, guys. I know I'm getting some weird lighting when I take my hands out and put them back in. It's just some weird glare I've got going on right now. I apologize for that, but in saying that, I'm going to go right into it. This is a Apex review, so I'll do it in that form. If you guys have any questions about my Apex reviews, I'll put the video describing how my methodology in approaching these in the description of this video. You can go ahead and see the link. So go check that video out if you have any questions on how I'm going about this. In saying that, first things first, I want to talk about my overall view going in. Like I said, I've been really dying to try a Bestech. I did like this design and the sense of the look. I thought it looked cool. I saw that the machining was done really well. I really wanted to try that. I also been dying to just see their action and their fit and finish and see all these things that everyone's talking about. I did somewhat really like the shape. I was like, ooh, that looks like something I might dig. And it's nice and contoured. And I thought maybe it'd be something I'd be into. And I don't love the blade shape, but I'll get more into that as I go talking about this guy. So as far as the overall, I was kind of excited to get it and try it out. As far as we'll go ahead and go into the specs of the knife. I'll go ahead and put those on the page right now. This is a larger knife, and you can see there we got a 5-ounce folder, and it's definitely a larger knife, the overall length and everything. So you know what to expect. I'll bring you back, and we'll go ahead and do some size comparisons. We'll go ahead and bring in the Wee Bishop, which was Kind of had these at the same time for the Apex review, so I'll go ahead and bring that guy in. A little smaller. The Eskra is definitely a large knife. And then I'll go ahead and bring in, let's go ahead and bring in the Chavez Ultramar Redemption Street. And then we'll bring in the ZT0609. Still a smaller knife. These are both smaller knives. So you can see that the Eskra is definitely a larger knife. Go ahead and bring in some Spydercos. With the Shaman, with my custom scale work there. You can see that the Shaman's getting a little closer here. Now we're talking a knife that's in the same ballpark. And then the Para 3, which is obviously going to be smaller. But you get a good idea of how big this Eskra is. Then I'll go ahead and bring in some Benchmades. Of course, we got the Freak, Super Freak. That is a good size comparison, guys. Almost identical. Then you add the Choil here, and you're going to lose some cutting edge, for sure. But very similar size knife. And then a 940, because I know a lot of guys out there have 940s. And also, I'll be bringing the 940 back in in a later time on this video for that discussion. And then moving right along, I'll go ahead and talk about the fit and finish. Or actually, no, I'm sorry. I'm going to skip aesthetics. Aesthetically, guys, I already kind of talked about the aesthetics here a little bit. Sorry for this glare again. But yeah, aesthetically, I really do. I did enjoy this knife. I'm going to try something and see if it helps the lighting here, guys. Sorry for the... Oh, there we go. I think that's going to help the glare. Hopefully it does. Yeah, it does a little bit. Well, anyways. So, moving right along, aesthetically, I think this knife looks good. I like the milling on the titanium. It's definitely pretty cool looking. You can see all the different angles and glares, and, you know, the way that it plays with the light here is really nice. The back spacer's done well. Pretty cool looking. Blade shapes, not particularly drawn to the blade shape, but the lines of the knife are beautiful. As you guys can see, you see this line follows the blade. It almost has like a wave look to the whole knife, and it's really a nice touch, like the way, I gotta say, I do like the way that the lines of this knife run. You can see this milling pattern runs directly into the top of the blade, along the spine. The swedge looks really good with the blade shape. This is like almost like a drop point, but it does have it's like a modified drop point, and it's done very well. I do like the look of the knife. It's got a cool look to it. In saying that, I'll move right into the fit and finish. And as far as the fit and finish is concerned, it's done excellently. You guys can see that the milling on this handle, you can see that there's a milling texture pattern here, which is a really nice feel to it. And it's not sharp or anything. I don't know if you guys can hear that. Very subtle. And it's done really nicely. And the anodizing, you can still see the milling lines there. The anodizing on this is super consistent, very nicely done. Really well done anodizing job and milling. You guys can see that everything is chamfered very nice, inside and out. We got a chamfered area here for where your finger lands. That's a nice touch. And there's like a pocket there where your finger lands as far as the action, deployment's concerned. So that's a nice touch. Your finger's not going to get tired or worn down from hitting that every time you flip it, if you're consistently flipping it. So that's a nice touch as far as finish is concerned. You see everything's chamfered very nicely. The spine of the blade is chamfered very nicely. Even where the swedge is done, it's chamfered, as you can see there. The jimping's done excellently. This is kind of where I want jimping, where it's pretty light when I'm just doing this, but as soon as I put pressure down, it wants to grip. So that's if there is jimping, this is how I like it done. Very, very light, chamfered well. As far as finish is concerned, the finish of the blade, I should say, is done very well. It's got like a stone wash, almost mirror. You can see my face there, like a mirrored stone wash with the swedge. Everything's done very nicely. This is all chamfered very nicely as far as the aperture hole and everything. The clip is done, you know, very nicely, and milled pocket clip is really nicely done. And you can see it's just got one screw that's actually pocketed, so that's a nice touch. But I'll get on this clip a little bit more later, especially in the ergonomics talk and stuff. This is one thing to talk about. We do have a a cutaway on the outside, which can become an issue with the pocket clip, but we'll talk about more of that when I come back in the pocket clip and carry discussion. Fit and finish is done pretty well, guys, I will say. And we've got a very solid lockup with about, let's say about 25%. Lock bar does travel to about 50%. No lock stick though. No lock stick, even with that. And no play, any direction, no play. So really nice as far as that's concerned. As far as the tolerances, it's pretty tight. I'm sure they have some pockets there, at least inside the titanium handle where they fit in. I did not disassemble this knife. This is a Apex review, so I'm not doing disassembly. Very tight tolerances, nice and perfectly centered. We do have some chamfering along the backspacer like we see in a lot of these Chinese folders. You got an inside chamfer, an outside chamfer, and it lines up really nice. I have a feeling that this backspacer has shouldered standoffs or something. It seems like they're shouldered, or it has some kind of locating pin, because it lines up like really nicely. But of course that chamfering helps with any variance. So nicely done, very nicely done. Now, as far as design goes, I really do like the design of this knife, although there are a few things that I just don't love, okay? I like the design overall. Like I said, the aesthetic lines look really good. One thing I'll say is I don't necessarily love this blade shape, like the way it kind of looks like it's tilted back a little. It looks a little weird to me, if I'm being like perfectly honest and subjective here, guys. But it's a little odd, and I don't love this shape, even though it does have your flat, some belly, and even another flat up there. Not necessarily flat, but it's not like, it's just not your average belly that you normally see on knives, something like this, you know, where you get that up sweep. This one kind of holds the edge down and almost looks like a tanto in a way, how it comes out and up. But you just don't get that average belly, almost more like a Spyderco belly on like one of their leaf-shaped blades, kind of like that type of, look at that. Yeah, that's very similar type of profile. So I do like it, although with the combination of the like kind of tilted back drop point, it isn't ideal for me as far as aesthetics go. It looks a little strange, but I'm really nitpicking here, guys, and I did really enjoy the look of this knife overall. So I'm nitpicking when I say that. The design aspect that really kind of leaves me not wanting more, but kind of disappointed is, you guys have probably heard this. Yeah. This clip, the way they designed this clip, it's just not ideal. I don't know if that was something the designer was like, oh, this is how I want to do it, and this is what we're doing. Or if this was we going, hey, let's do this to save manufacturing costs, or I don't know. I would think milling in that pocket would cost more than like having two screws. The one screw is a nice touch, but not if it's coming loose constantly. What I will say is that when I first got this knife, it was slightly loose already. The clip was already loose. I put it in and out of my pocket, just carried it the first day, and it already loosened up. Not to this level, but it had already loosened up. So I took my Torx, I just tightened it and went about my business. I didn't take it out, I didn't do anything like that. Just tightened it. Next day, I put it in and out of my pocket a few times, things started loosening up again. Then I carried it the other day, and I had tightened it again, and in use, I'm going to go ahead and tighten it right now, guys, because it's bugging the hell out of me. In use, I actually, I realized it was loosening up a little bit, just going in and out of my pocket, and then I put it to use and actually did some cutting with it, and it loosened up to where you saw it, where it was literally just, it wouldn't even hold in your pocket. I just literally just put the knife in my pocket, took everything else out of my pocket, and just let it sit in the knife. This clip does have a good dimension and everything. He designed that well, but this whole one screw with the pocket, it's not done as well as it could have been. If I put some Loctite on it, it would probably not have too much of an issue. The Loctite would probably keep that screw seated, but it's just not ideal to have that kind of situation happening already. Like, right, I didn't want to mess with it and put Loctite on it or anything, because this is an Apex pass around group knife, and I don't want to do anything. I don't want to change anything. I wanted to leave it the way the factory had sent it, so I didn't put any Loctite on it. But I would probably be doing that immediately if this was my knife, and I probably should have anyways. They probably wouldn't have cared. But I do like the way this is designed, as far as like the milling on this kind of matches this line. The design aspect is actually done very well. Moving forward, I'm going to talk about the action. Action is done pretty well, guys. As far as the deployment's concerned, you can see we got this scoop here, which is a nice design, into your flipper, which is like pretty much in line, a little higher than the pivot. In the 12 o'clock type of deployment, got pretty much perfect deployment every time. I haven't noticed anything as far as like having a failed deployment. I can fail it if I try, which is pretty much the case with any knife. You can eventually just get it to fail by putting just enough tension on it. But if I'm not trying to, it's really, I don't think I've had this thing fail to deploy. And as you guys know, I use my thumb to check the detent. This thing is done amazingly. I can use my middle finger to flick it. We can use our thumb. We can roll it out as long as your finger's not on that lock bar. I think, yeah, we can pop it loose. You gotta really be careful where your fingers are though. And then you can of course go ahead and pinch that thing out and roll it out. So that's done very well. And as far as detent goes, really nice, guys. Really nice detent. Left hand, very good. As far as the closing action, at the pivot tension it's at right now, we got a pretty stiff closing action. It is a shake shut, but you gotta really shake it shut. As you can see, stays exactly where it's put. You just really gotta, I can swing it. Let's see if I can swing it in. Yeah. So if you swing it with some authority, it will close. But you gotta make sure you're giving it a good swing. It doesn't necessarily want to drop free. So when I compared it, because I got these two at about the same time, if I'm comparing it to the Wii, this one just, you ever so slightly shake it, it wants to go. This one you gotta really give it some authority to get it to go down. Which some people might prefer this. That's why I don't say it's great, as far as like, these are both great actions. They're just very different. That's why you'll hear me say like, oh, it's a great action. And then you'll hear me say great on this one as well. It's also great, and it's very smooth. The the resistance is very consistent and very smooth. But with the pivot tension we have right now, this is the kind of closing action you're going to get. So moving forward from the action, we're going to go ahead and talk about the blade. As far as the blade is concerned on this knife, I did think that the blade shape was a little odd, but okay, like it still looks good to me. But as far as functionally, it's very broad, and then you have a pretty high saber grind, so it does come up pretty high as far as that's concerned. So you got a lot of distance from the top of the grind to your apex. And in saying that, they did go fairly aggressive from there as well. Even right back here where it's shorter, they went pretty aggressively. And you end up with a really nice behind the edge thickness. Trying to keep this shorter, I'm just going to go ahead and talk about it. You guys know I do actually bring out my calipers and show you, but in this one I'm just going to talk. We've got a, I believe it's 15 thousandths right here. 15 thousandths behind the edge. This is about a 35 degree inclusive, maybe like a 36 degree inclusive, like 18 degrees per side, 17, 18. And in saying that, it's pretty consistent as far as the BTE thickness. We have about between 14 and 16 thousandths all the way to the tip. And you can see that in the secondary bevel here on this factory grind. Very consistent. Very nicely ground blade. Everything as far as like the way that they did the swedge and where it terminates is done very evenly. Very nicely done as far as that's concerned. And then the grind is just nice and aggressive. And you guys can even see that tip is not super thin, but you can see that it's very thin for the cutting edge. So you could technically probably pry. You can see if you're looking at, like, the swedge gives you a impression that it thins very quickly, but actually brings it out pretty far. You can see there. See right here. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily pry with that tip, but it's pretty strong. I wouldn't be worried about it in normal everyday use. So really enjoyed the blade. M390, you guys, I talked about that a little bit at the beginning. Their M390 at you can see it there, at Bestech has come up soft in the past, but they're doing their best to rectify that and get their HRCs up. I don't know where this thing's at. I will say in use it felt pretty good. Stropped back really well. I didn't use it very much because it is an Apex review knife, so I used it just, ever so slightly, just testing the ergonomics, testing the geometry, and that's it. I'm not going above and beyond to try and test the steel. So I really just get to the brunt of it right away and don't try and do a ton of cutting. So in the cutting I did, it seemed to cut very well, and I'm sure with my edge on it, it would just slice very well, especially with that BTE, which is very well done on that grind. So I really enjoyed the geometry they did on this knife, and very, very impressed by that. If you guys notice, this thing's already starting to loosen up just a little bit just from me handling it. It's hard to get through on camera, but anyways. Yeah, so moving forward, I'll talk about the performance overall. I did enjoy the performance of the blade on this knife, and for the most part, the ergonomics. I didn't talk about this, but it is a fairly thick handle. We talk about it a little bit. I showed you the dimensions, and we're talking about like 0.58, I think, as far as the thickness of the handle, and then it's contoured with that milling, which is done very nicely, and you can see that my hands really it fits the hand very nicely. I do have medium to large size hands, and this is 3 3/4 broad and 4 inches tall, and 6 1/4 inches from this point to this point, 6 1/4 to 6 1/2. And you can see that it really does fit nicely, and even if you had larger hands in the grip back here, you'd still feel pretty good. Moving up into the choil, this is done very well, and you give you plenty of space to where I'm not thinking I'm going to cut myself. Really nice as far as the finger choil's done. Even in hammer grip, I don't feel like I'm going to cut myself, which I have been kind of saying about some knives lately. Let me see if I have this guy in here with me. Yeah, we got this guy, which, as you probably know from my height versus reality on this guy, this is a little tight, and I do find myself almost cutting myself there. So this one, you could go into hammer grip and not even worry about it. It really feels good in that sense. And this dimension here is nice, so it doesn't feel thin in hand. But in saying that, if you're back here, what I notice is in hammer grip, it does feel slightly toothpicky right here. And what I was going to talk about, and this is why I said I was going to bring the 940 back into the discussion. 940 is like this is where I pretty much say this is as thin as a knife gets right here, and I can use it and function with it in like a putting it to work all day type of task. That's about as thin as and narrow as I can go right here. And in saying that, this knife is actually pretty much the same right there, except it's a little thicker. So I would think that this would not feel thin in hand. But something about the way that this is, milled, or I don't know what it is, but it just feels a little thin right there. And I don't know why, because this is actually thinner, this dimension, and about the same this dimension. I don't know if it's because of the way it curves. I don't know, because this is so similar. I'm not really understanding. Maybe it's because it's contoured, but it just feels slightly thin right there. And it feels like back here I have more control than up here. So in the saber grip, it feels great. But when you go into hammer, it just a little too much movement right here for my preference. This is, like I said, that's about as much as I can take. And maybe because there isn't like the contouring and weird movement here, like this one has like this dip away right here, and there's a lot going on. So maybe that's what contributes to that. But I don't notice that with this knife as much as I do with this. So in saying that, it's just my nitpick on this guy as far as ergonomics go. And moving from there, I'll just talk quickly about everything else as far as ergonomics go. Feel really good. I did notice in the choked up grip, it fills that part of my hand a little better, and I don't notice it as much. And back here, it's not telescopic feeling, but it is kind of far from the blade. This is why I talk about not needing choils on everything, guys, because I feel like if they had moved this, plunge grind back a little bit and just brought the blade back to here, man, that would have been another, 3/8 of an inch cutting edge, and you wouldn't need that finger choil. You just have more blade. So this is something that I know a lot of guys in the community call for, but it's not necessarily what I like. I don't think it's necessary in every case, which I think they're doing it on a lot of stuff these days. So yeah, sometimes I think it's like they just do it because they think everyone wants one, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. So in the carry of this knife, as far as carrying, the knife carried well. I did notice even at 5 ounces, which is the advertised weight, and I did weigh it, and it came up at like 4.98, so it's really close. The clip is done well as far as like retention versus spring versus ramp versus the ramp coming out. That is done excellently. And as far as ergonomics go, this clip disappears, especially with the curve and the way it's milled on this side. Disappears in hand. That just part of the design is beautifully done. I just think, probably, and guys, again, with some Loctite, I think my issue would be gone. I think it would solve everything. And honestly, I'll probably have the guys in the Apex review going, dude, just put Loctite on the clip and your problem's gone. But in saying that, I didn't want to do something I wasn't necessarily sure I should. So, yeah. Nice ergonomics as far as the clip's concerned, and function going in and out of the pocket. Really nice as far as in the pocket. This knife does kind of, want to curve back, and I did notice that it was nice just riding in the pocket. I'd never noticed it or was like, oh, this is hard to get by, or this is, this is heavy, this is clunky, this takes up a lot of room. I didn't notice any of that. the contouring and everything really works nicely with the carry. It is a broader knife, but with the way it sweeps back, it kind of tucks back into the pocket there, and you don't really notice how broad it is. So really nicely done as far as carry goes. And then in conclusion with this knife, guys, it's a knife that I like. I don't love. I won't find myself buying this knife most likely unless I got it for a stupid deal or something. Because then I could do some really cool things with the anodizing on this and mess with the flats and the contours and everything and do some really cool color combinations. I didn't mention the collar, but the gold touches, the gold accents on this are done very nicely. The way they did that like bronzish gold anodized backspacer clip and ring, pivot ring. So that's done very nicely. Jimping's done nicely. Everything about this knife is done very well. I love the fit and finish on the knife. It's done to the level of excellence I would expect from Wii or even Riot, and just really well done. I'm really impressed by the machining, by the fit and finish on this knife. The action's not super impressive, but impressive, I should say. But it's done. It's very good, and I would have no problem with this knife as my knife. For $254, I kind of desire a little bit better action, but I could probably mess with this action, and even just with the pivot tension, and get a more drop-free knife. But that's a personal preference, guys. So not everyone's gonna want that kind of drop, shut type knife. And in saying that, overall, I don't have a whole lot to complain about. The pocket clip, definitely one of my complaints. Going in and out of the pocket was done well, though, because this is pushed a little further down. So it's not like right at the edge of that, which definitely creates an issue. It did catch a few times, but with that loose pocket clip, I didn't notice it at all. So that's definitely something. Yeah, I'm probably not going to be picking one of these up, but I really do appreciate being able to handle it. And it definitely focuses my eyes on Bestech a little bit and says, like, hey, they're doing good stuff. I just need to find a design that I like that they're doing, that I really want, and I'm sure I'll probably end up loving it. So this one misses a little bit for me, but it shows me a desire to get one of these in hand, to get one to use, and it really shows me their attention to detail and their finish work and everything. So really appreciate getting to use this knife. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Sorry this ended up being a long one again. I can't seem to get it under half an hour here. But hey, thanks for watching. I hope you guys made it to this point. If you do, I appreciate it. Thanks, and have a great day.